us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever.
Well, good afternoon. As I'd said earlier, I'm Paul Jackson, and this kind of got pushed to me, or I kind of said maybe we ought to do something, because after the funeral that Tom and Jeff Beckett had put together back in, I'm trying to remember how long back this has been now at this point. They did not have a memorial service. They did not have a real gathering for Harold. Neither did they for Nita. And so it was kind of suggested, talked about in a couple different circles, and a few things had popped out on Facebook, that maybe we ought to do something and get together. And so I said, and drove up here one day from Columbus, and said that we would try and put something together, but we weren't quite sure what the venue was. So here we are. And just to kind of go through a couple things as to what little bit of a game plan we have on this today, I'll let you know kind of as we go. First of all, there are a handful of some thank yous that I want to make mention of. First of all, I want to obviously thank Shawnee United Methodist here for the venue. This has been wonderful. We've been told, because they have a youth group coming in here this afternoon, that we need to be out by 4. I want to clarify though and ask Lori or somebody, Sharon, do we need to do anything with chairs, or we? But where are we going with them? So they had this set up this morning, so I guess on our way out, or whenever you're finished, if you could just help maybe and move a couple chairs to the back. I was thinking they were going to also maybe have some tables so that we could kind of sit round table a little bit with some things. But that didn't happen. I also want to thank Sharon Barr over here for her help. We got together for a few hours with the next person I want to thank, which is Anthony Taylor at Shawnee, who's the choir director currently there, and put together some type of an idea. And the idea was we wanted to just simply have a gathering, a get-together, so people could talk, so people could share memories, so people could remember Harold and Nita in a very popular and a very maybe informal way, so that we could just share stories, look at pictures. So my thanks also to Anthony. Steve Race also helped put this video together. He can't be here, and so I want to thank him and Bart Mills, who helped put this together. I don't know where Bart got to. I saw him earlier. But also with some of the publicity that hit the paper. Lori Blanchong and her mother and her Aunt Barb and a handful of other people with regard to food. Bruce Hendershot helped out. He's got some wonderful donuts and pastries over here if you want to eat. Barb brought some cookies. I'm just trying to think here. Greg Phipps is putting together a video back here in the back, and I know I see a couple phones going already for Facebook Live and everything else. Let's see if I get everybody else. Oh, Mike Van Meter's helping with some of the setup back here video-wise. Am I missing somebody? anyhow, here's what we kind of want to do today. And I'm going to start off and just give you a brief, quick little bio on myself. And then if somebody else wants to talk, I guess there's a couple people that are going to maybe sing. And I hate to call it this, but it's, I got lack of a better word, an open mic, so that we can have kind of an open mic time in a church to honor Harold, to remember the 33 years that he spent at Shawnee, at the high school, in the community, at the various churches, at the Jewish temple, at the radio station, and he was just Mr. Everything for Allen County and the Lima community. Real quick, just to tell you a little bit about me, a couple of you know, and I told one or two people and they didn't know. I came here in 1971, moved to Columbus. Dad was with Huntington Bank, and I played football, played baseball my freshman year, but really kind of got into choir because of Harold. He was very personal. We had been attending First Baptist Church. He got me involved in singing in the choir there. Mom and Dad sang in the choir. One thing led to another, and I became Mr. Choir Geek. And that's who I was, and got involved in the musicals, and glad to see, a number of people here that I went to school with. Graduated in 1975, went off to college, finished at Ohio State, met my wife, got married, and in the fall of 1979, Thanksgiving weekend, Harold called me. "Jackson, you want a job?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "We need to come to Shawnee." And I said, "Oh, okay. When?" He said, "Monday." I didn't finish student teaching, and he's calling me about a job. And I said, "Well, when does this thing start?" He says, "As soon as you can be here." So I cut my student teaching short and started at Shawnee, drove from Columbus for 4 weeks, back and forth every day. My first paycheck went to Shell Oil. And started teaching in the middle school in the 1979-1980 school year, and learned a tremendous amount of what I didn't know. And Harold taught me. He was my mentor. He was my friend. He was my choir director. And he, I know, can conjure up a bunch of memories in your own mind with regard to the same thing. I continued on in the middle school, and in 1982, I was pink slipped because I was the last one in, and I'm the first one out. And immediately, Harold goes marching up to the superintendent's office, and he retired. Guess who got the job? All of it. His and mine, because that was the only way I was going to keep my job, is if I took everything that he did and what I did. So I was middle school choir director, high school choir director, middle school general music, and the whole 9 yards, grades 6 through 12, for the remaining 3.5 years. And I stayed with that, started work on my master's, left in 1985, and Marilyn Roth Basinger took over after me, and then she retired. Somebody help me. 2010. And we've had a few choir directors since then, and I want to introduce now Anthony Taylor, who's got a group from the a cappella choir. They're going to come and sing something, I think the alma mater, correct? And then help us out. And we're going to kind of gather around, join hands for you that want to sing, that know it, and the you that don't know it, we've got copies of The Lord Bless You and Keep You. I think it'd be a wonderful way to start our program with a little bit of a musical rendition. So, Anthony, the program's all yours.
Well, first I want to say thank you so much to, there we go. So thank Paul so much for all the hard work that he's done putting this together. If we can give him a round of applause. He's been really worked hard for this. As well as Sharon Barr, as well as Lori Blanchong, and everyone else who came together, if not through actual work, but just through a labor of love and support of what we wanted to do here for Harold. That as the choir director at Shawnee, I feel very much thankful for what he did for our school, but even more than that, as a child of Lima, who is involved so much in the community, in the musical community here, to have a trailblazer like him who really set the standard for what the arts were here in Lima, for people who continue to use those same standards and those same programs and those same activities that he kept alive all those years. I could not be more thankful for him for that. So it goes beyond just Shawnee for me. But I have some students here, and a couple of them have prepared something to say about Harold. So I'm going to give the mic over to Molly Kilo and Peyton Parlapiano.
Good afternoon. As he said, my name is Molly Kilo, and this is Peyton Parlapiano, and we are honored to speak on behalf of the Shawnee Choir as we remember the huge impact that Harold Beckett had on the program.
We want to express how grateful we are for all that Harold Beckett did for the Shawnee Choir program, for it is truly because of him that we enjoy such great success every year. He made it truly what it is today.
We continue to remember and honor him by singing "The Lord Bless You and Keep You" at every concert, carrying on the tradition that he started years ago. And we also honor him by giving out an award in his name each year to an outstanding choir student, a senior in the choir.
We thank you for having us speak today in honor of Harold Beckett and the tremendous impact he made on Shawnee Choir. We aspire to continue his legacy, for neither the choir nor the entire music community would be the same if it were not for him. Thank you.
Copy of Lord Bless You and Keep You?
Absolutely.
All right.
Doing it now?
Yeah, here guys.
Yeah, we knew.
Why do I do it? You guys can do it.
I think probably also in the process of this, some of us might feel better if we were standing closer to those that are going to sing the alto or sing the bass part or sing the tenor part or whatever. So maybe congregate a little bit.
I ain't staying with you. I'm always messing me up.
Tenors and altos.
Say that again.
Hey, come on up forward.
Come on down front. This isn't church. Come on down front. Did I lose my? I lost mine.
I don't know. Oh, we're all going to the. So the whole audience is going to
Just
the.
kind of maybe in a circle somewhat.
Get around in a circle.
Tenor, bass, soprano.
Thank you. As you're taking a seat, couple things here real quick, and then I'm going to turn it over to whomever. There's refreshments over here, my left, your right. And that being said, I'm going to step down. And then, like I said, this is kind of like an open mic situation. If you've got a story you'd like to tell about Harold, if you've got a memory of your time at choir, in a musical, whatever the case may be, if you're in one of these slides or two or three and would like to say something, wonderful. We'd love. Here's Bill. He's here to say it. All right? Yep. Go.
For those of you who don't know who I am, I checked my wallet and I'm Bill Giffen. At least that's what my driver's license says. My wife and I were in the first 4-year class that Harold was here, and I remember the teachers that were back then. They were Guyton, Gorman, Connect, Lappin, Van Meter, Deckross, Byerly, Mills, Starling, Kreitz, Baca, Hughes. What a bunch. They were fantastic. And most of those teachers were underpaid and had summer jobs and had other jobs on the side, so they keep on teaching. They impressed me. Not enough that I ever want to become a teacher, don't get me wrong. Some of the things that I had with Harold or did with Harold was, do any of you remember the little slips we had that let you go out in the hall and things like that? The teacher would sign it. I became very proficient at signing his name. I don't know whether he ever knew it or not. He taught me one thing about solo singing, particularly if you're singing someplace with just a pianist. If you make a mistake, what you do is you turn and glare at the piano player real quick. He fired me as a pupil. Why? Well, I asked him why. He said, well, Bill, you're starting to imitate me. Oh, okay. He said the world wasn't ready for 2 Becketts. So he sent me to a gal named Millie Sontag Urfer. She was an old-style gal dressed in 1890 type clothes, and she was a terror when it came to me and music. She forced me to do things I didn't think I could ever do. She was great. The thing I loved about Harold was he decided it was time for me to get a different coach. He got me 2 jobs in music. Now, back in those days, You know, guys, in my situation, I worked for several years for the township mowing weeds with a scythe. And Harold and I also dug a ditch at the corner of 501 and Norfolk Street. I think we're down like 12 feet with no safety equipment. He was up, he had set me down at the bottom. He was up halfway. And I was shoveling dirt up to him and he was throwing it out. And we worked together, I think 2 years we worked together for the township. But he got me a job first at the Christian Scientist Church. He got me a singing job. They paid $15 a Sunday. My God, that was found money. And that was back in, I was there for 3 years. And then one day he called me up, and I don't remember when this was. All I know is that he was going to take the summer and go someplace for some sort of schooling or something. And he was the cantor at the temple at that time. He said, "Bill, I want you to be the cantor at the temple." I said, "Huh? I don't understand." He said, "We'll get somebody to teach you enough you can do it." So he got me a teacher. I learned enough of the stuff that I could do the service and not make a fool out of myself and the temple both. I don't think that paid anything, but that was not the point. The point was I got the experience of doing it. He advised me, no, he did not advise me, he begged me not to make music a career. And, quote, "Bill, music does not pay very well," end of quote. So I didn't, although I really was thinking about it. For the last 4 or 5 years before he died, he and I would have breakfast together over at Ike's, and we would sit and lie to each other as old friends do. We became very, very close and very open with each other. And we found out our birthdays were only a couple days apart, and he was only 10 years older than I was, something like that, so he was about the same age I was. But during that breakfast time, he told me about his experiences in Europe. Now, he was a sergeant in a bakery outfit, bacon bread, in Brussels, I think. And the big problem they had was buzz bombs coming in. But he didn't get along with the commander. So, doing a typical Beckett thing, he applied to go to OCS. And he went to OCS. They took him. He went down to Versailles. They had an OCS school down there at Versailles. And he told me the only thing he remembered was there was some colonel there that every time he saw any of them, he says, "You're going to die." Because most of those second lieutenants did die. That's a heck of it. Anyway, he must have been fairly competent because he came out alive and not wounded. Now, one of two things. Either his troops loved him or they hadn't got around to fragging him yet, like they did in the Vietnam War. Because most second lieutenants do not come back, let me tell you that. But they loved him so much, they stole a Jeep for him, along with the top, the side curtains, and the doors. And they painted new numbers on the bumpers, some outfit nobody ever heard of. And he had this Jeep, a personal Jeep, to use there when he was off the line. His company commander liked it so much that he would borrow the Jeep from Harold to go into Paris to see his girlfriend. A little more serious. You know, seldom do any of us have the privilege or the opportunity to know, work with, and be a part of a man's life like Harold. He was natural. He was what he was. No affectation. In all my contacts, business, in the Guard, other places where I've been in my life, I've never run into anybody like him. He taught most of us, I think, to feel the music and find out what it meant for us. Because one of the things he and I talked about, and it's a problem that he and I both have, is we sometimes are not capable of telling people what we feel, but through the music we can sometimes express it. He taught me to express it and to love it for that reason. I have had the fortune, great fortune, to sing as a member of a chorus for 3 fantastic directors. One was Mark Munson, who directed the Lima Symphony Chorus for several years. He's a professor at Bowling Green. The other one was Rexford Keller at Ohio Wesleyan, fantastic director. These 2 guys got people that were already trained and had fantastic choruses. Harold Beckett was the third. He trained his people and then made a fantastic chorus. I am convinced that he could take a church choir that was made up of 2 tenors, one Irish and one a whiskey tenor. Now, you all know what a whiskey tenor is? Okay. 3 basses, one of which couldn't read music, a covey of women who think loud music impresses God, and one of them has a tremendous vibrato, an octave vibrato. And in 2 weeks, he could have them singing in a way that would impress angels. And on top of that, in 2 months, he'd have 40 voices instead of 8. It's been very much my pleasure and my honor to have been part of him and part of his life. Later on, maybe I was told I got to sing something, but I wanted some other people to talk, so we can take the other part up later on. Thank you so much. Harold was a dear friend. I miss him, and I know you all do, but he was 1 in 100 million. Thank you. This was Harold's from Fiddler on the Roof. There was a picture of Harold as Kavya up there a little bit ago. And this is sunrise, sunset, and it's not really in my range because Harold had me being a dramatic tenor. And then after I grew up and my voice changed, I became a baritone. So anyway, we're going to try it. She
Hi, I'm Bill Hughes, class of 1970. Where do you start with Harold? I was lucky enough to do 5 different musicals with him. Was in choir 4 years. We did some things through Harold, and talking to Tom Orchard, talking to Carol Riggs Spackey, sorry, one of the ones. Over the last couple of days, it came down to them asking me, Bill, why does Harold mean this much to you? At a time when I didn't think I had it in me to do anything, he said I did. And then he went and created the space in which I could do that, safe space. His ability to be and to communicate to me what was right, what was wrong, what fit, what didn't. He had this way of, I would sing something and he'd say, yeah, or a lot of very gentle correction there, but a lot of very meaningful correction there, not just in what we sang, not just in what we did, who we were, how we did it, but a lot from the heart. Later on, I was lucky enough to be back here. I was working as a mechanic at Allen County Motors, and Harold had that little Triumph. Some of you may remember the Triumph that he had with the cap. You couldn't drive the car without the cap. He called up and he said, Hughes, and he had a couple other words in here that I won't use, but he said, car's not working again. It won't start. I said, Harold, it's an English car. It's got Lucas Electronics on it. It's not going to start. He said, you got to come out and fix it. All right. So it's one of those, it's a Saturday morning. All right. I go out. And I'm tinkering with it, and I'm trying a couple of different things with it. And he said, want me to show you how to fix it? I said, oh, okay. Because you are so mechanical, Harold. Disappears, comes back, and he has a hand sledge. I swear to goodness, a little 8-pound hand sledge. And I said, and he handed it to me, and I said, it's an electrical issue, Harold. And he said, watch. And he reaches down and he smacks the daylights out of the side of the engine block. I said, you're going to crack the block. And he said, now go and try to start it. It started. Not always the most subtle way of doing things, but he did it Harold's way. And I came to appreciate, not just then, but in a whole lot of years since then, when I've hit speed bumps in my life, when things haven't quite been what I expected, I've remembered Harold, and I've dragged in parts of him about, you could do that, or, and I had a lot of or times in my life. So I just wanted to say thanks, you guys. Thanks for coming. Thanks for honoring Harold. He meant a lot to a lot of us. And he's one of those kind of guys. People said, well, I live in California. People said, why'd you come back? I said, it's Harold. You know, I just do that. So thank you.
Hello, my name's Tom Martello. I was in the class of '82, which was Mr. Beckett's last class. Lots to remember, but I remember I was kind of a jerk. I was one of those kids that if you had as a teacher, you wanted to strangle him, because I just couldn't stay out of trouble, and I never was as good as I should have been at anything. And after Mr. Beckett died, I called my little brother. I said, you know, I was a bum of a student. I did okay in college. And the teachers never got out of me what they wanted to. And in sports, I had some talent and never got out of me what I should have. But in choir, I pretty much did it. And I was the same jerk in choir that I was everywhere else. He said, yeah, but you respected Mr. Beckett. And I thought, you know, that's really it. He gave me free voice lessons, kept me after class, kept me after school. We talked. He taught me how to sing. I wonder as I wander out under the sky. I hated that song. He made me sing it 1,000,000 times. But he taught me to apply yourself and to not be a jerk. My sophomore year, I didn't get the part in a play that I wanted, so I quit in a huff. And then my junior year, I decided I wanted a piece of the play again. I came back, and he pulled me aside. He says, Tom, there's a special project in the Music Man. It's a quartet. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of hard work. You're part of 4 people, and you're not getting any glory out of that. Well, we did, but I expect something out of you. You got some redemption to make. And I did it with Bart Mills, who I think is here, if he's still here, and Todd Burton and Keith Lehman, who was Sharon's son. And it was one of the most rewarding experiences in my life. And then the next year came back, and I had the lead in The Sound of Music, along with Cindy Warden, who we're going to see a video of in a little bit. We didn't know it was Harold's last year. I don't think we knew until the end of the year. I couldn't remember why it was his last year until Mr. Jackson told the story. But I think we sent him out right. He hadn't had his choir is going to competition every year, and they hadn't been to state in a few years. And when my class were freshmen, we went to state and got 2s. And we're pretty happy about that because getting to state wasn't that easy. And then we got 1s the next 3 years. Junior year, he was sick. I don't remember what happened to him, but Mr. Jackson came and actually led us at the state tournament, or state meet, whatever you call it, competition. Anyway, I think Mr. Beckett had a profound effect on a lot of us, just by being a fundamentally decent guy, a man with some patience, who wasn't a pushover. And that's not an easy combination. And I think I've talked about enough. Sharon, do you want me to come up there or stay here? Whatever you would like. I'll stay here. Okay, I'm going to sing a song. All right. Edelweiss, Edelweiss, every morning you greet me, small and white, clean and bright, you look happy to meet me. Blossom of snow, may you bloom and grow forever. Edelweiss, Edelweiss, bless my homeland forever. Blossom of snow, may you bloom and grow forever. Edelweiss, Edelweiss, bless my homeland forever. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Tom Orchard, and I graduated in 1970. And I had the good fortune to be with Bill and a number of the folks sitting back there in 3 different musicals. And as I had mentioned to people previously, the one thing that Harold did for me is he gave me the confidence to stand up in front of groups and in front of sing, and gave me the confidence to do a lot of different things. And I'm sure he did for many of you also. When I was I think it was in my junior year, We also had the choir concerts where individuals could get up and do different things. And a guy named John Koenig and Greg Stewart and we did a tune, a Leonard Cohen tune at that time, and I played guitar on it. And Harold said that was pretty good, and they put it on that year's record and gave me the confidence to continue to do that kind of thing. And then in my senior year, we did it again. We did Leaving on a Jet Plane, the same three of us, and we really enjoyed ourselves in playing that song. And Harold again said that was pretty good, and he allowed it to be on the record. And that encouraged me to then, as I went on through college and went on through life, to continue to play. I have played almost every day since then. I now sponsor a festival, a guitar music festival at Bowling Green State University, and that's really because of Harold, because of all the different things he was able to do for me. I still play in a bluegrass group right now, and particularly as we're singing a lot of the harmonies, I can hear that darn voice in my head telling me when I should push and when I shouldn't push. And so as I've said to others before, I owe a lot to Harold. I owe a lot in terms of what I've been able to do in my life, what I've been able to try to give back to others, and the confidence he has given me. One other thing. He called me, after my freshman year in college, he called me and said, we're going to be putting together a show down at Encore, and I'd really like you to play one of the roles, the role of Cliff in Cabaret down there. And I had worked with George Dunster and Patty Runser and Harold in a lot of our high school musicals. And George and Harold were very different people. But the one thing I got to recognize is how you can get a couple of people who are so different but so passionate about the same thing to really turn into a very good team. And I've tried to remember that also throughout all my years. So Harold, thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Connie Levy Horning, and I'm the president of Temple of Beth Israel Sher Zedek. I'm pictured up in one of those. I did Harold's makeup for when he was Tevye for the Town Square productions. Harold knew me a lot longer than I ever knew him. And what I mean by that is he came to our temple to be our cantorial soloist, not Jewish, not knowing Hebrew, in the early 1950s when I was 2. And he remembers a story he used to tell me, and I didn't believe it, that I used to run up the aisles when I was 3 years old during the services, and I'm thinking my parents would never have allowed such a thing, but he insisted that I ran up the aisles during the services. But he and Ed Zickafus, who was our accompanist for as many years as Harold was our cantorial soloist, were a vaudeville team out of heaven. They were unbelievable together. And we used to do a Purim service every year, which is our sort of Jewish Mardi Gras with costumes, the story of Queen Esther. And he and Ed used to dress up in the most hilarious costumes. They would put all of the lyrics to all of our prayers and songs into modern and cowboy and jazz and Broadway tunes, hysterical, every year. That we miss a lot. So Harold was such a part of our lives, and he learned the Hebrew from Eleanor Glazier, one of our temple members, whose father was a cantor. She trained him in how to sing all of the music. He had been able to sing in German, so if you can sing in German, you can get the ach sound quite well in the Hebrew. And he most people just assumed he was Jewish since he was singing so beautifully in Hebrew. And for over 50 years, almost 50, 55 years, we did a 50-year celebration for him, which is why I was quoted from that Toledo Blade article that you probably saw in the Lima News, talking about how Harold thought it was time to retire when he was in his 80s. And he just said, oh, you know, I'm tired. My voice is not as good as it used to be. And so he lasted maybe a year. That was it. Then he wanted to come back. He couldn't wait to come back. He missed the people. He loved the music. And he sang it with such passion and emotion that now we have cantors and other singers and soloists over the years who have sung the high holiday music, and we compare them all to Harold. The Jewish people singing for us don't sound as good as Harold did, and they don't seem to feel, he may or may not have known what he was singing, but it was so beautiful and so passionate and emotional, and we got so much out of listening to every note and every nuance. And he was a good friend and used to invite our rabbi's study class to come out to their farm, he and Nita's farm, at least once a year for a sort of commune of nature in the woods. And that's where Harold found God. It was in his beautiful woods with the lake, with the creek running through, and those beautiful trees, and he could really commune with whatever spiritual power was up there, and he wanted us to experience that, and it was absolutely gorgeous sitting under their apple trees in the spring and having a picnic outside and walking through those woods. So he was such a good friend to all of us that most people who we talked to just assume he was a member of the temple, he was Jewish. He was not. He was not a member of First Baptist Church either. He worked with Ed there for a lot of years, the Methodist churches, and of course with the schools, and then at Ohio Northern, where he and Ed, after they retired from teaching school full-time, worked at Ohio Northern teaching the college kids for many years. So Harold, I think, was with us for more than 50 years. We had lost track how many years, and we've missed him these past several years. But he was a dear friend, as some others have said, a mentor, a teacher, and just a very humble person. That's the first word that comes to mind when I think of Harold. He was just always so humble and just a wonderful person, and we miss him a lot, as all of you do. So thank you.
Oh, would you like to come up here? You be next. I don't want to fight. I keep pointing over there to my older sister. Are you going up? Are you coming up? No. Okay. Well, I think I first heard about Harold Beckett when my older sister, can you hear me? Oh, yeah. I'm Carol Ward Gibson. When my older sister, Margaret Ward, came home from school, I was probably in first grade and she was maybe, I don't know, junior in high school. But before then, she'd come home and she'd keep talking about this Mr. Beckett all the time. And it's just, I heard it. I thought, he must be pretty special. Well, of course, we all know he was very special. I guess what I loved about him was his red hair and his smile. Those two things really were imprinted in my heart. How many of you pursued a music career after having Mr. Beckett at Shawnee? Career in music, you know, like you majored in music, raise your hands, okay? And how many of you sang in a community choir? Raise your hand if you have. How many of you sung in a church choir? How many of you have been in a community theater, like a musical or something? Yes. That's where the influence of Mr. Beckett comes. We didn't all have to go to the Met after having Mr. Beckett. No. he instilled in us appreciation of singing and continuing that into our lives. I did take voices lessons from him for a couple years. I remember one time, I think it was maybe between my freshman and sophomore year of high school, I had ridden my bike over to school and I accidentally ran it into a big pile of stones. I fell down into it because I had shorts on and kind of mangled my knee a little bit. Well, the next time I had a voice lesson with Mr. Beckett, he looked down at that knee and he said, "What'd you do to your knee?" I explained it. And he said, with a smile on his face, "Well, I guess you're not going to get to be Miss America then." I was well aware of the fact that I would not be Miss America, but he always had a way to lighten up things. I was very privileged to be a student director of the a cappella choir my senior year of high school. I kind of treasure that as one of the happiest memories of my life. I got to be in the Mikado, and you may have seen pictures of that. The first musical that was done in the new auditorium. Now, I know there were other musicals done, but that was the first one done in the Hugh Downs Auditorium. And then I went on to college. I tried out for different musical groups, and maybe the director would say, "Oh, you have a pretty good ear for music." And I'd always say, I took lessons from Harold Beckett. And I joined a theater group in college, I'm sure because he got me to understand how wonderful it is to do musical theater. When I got a teaching job, what'd I do? I started a drama club. We did a lot of musicals and plays. It all goes back to Mr. Beckett. You know, I can't call him Harold. Can all of you guys call him Harold? I guess you can, but I always call him Mr. Beckett. And of course, trying out for symphony chorus, when the director would say, "Are you a music major?" I'd say no, but I studied with Harold Beckett. And even now and then I'd have a chorus director say, "Oh yes, you had a great background then, didn't you?" So we all know that Mr. Beckett has helped us in our avocations with music. The thing I want to say about him is he set the bar pretty high. And we did a lot of things in high school that a lot of people don't do until they get to college or to a community group. For example, in high school, he had us singing Benjamin Britten's Ceremony of Carols. Wow. We didn't know. I mean, we just thought it was hard. But yes, that's a pretty high level. He had us sing, I believe, a Bach Mass. And by the way, I graduated in '65. So I guess that was during the time of the Kennedy assassination. We did Fred Waring's Night Before Christmas. Again, Lima Symphony Chorus has done that. The Mikado, Broadway musicals, South Pacific, and so on. With all of that extra that we did, we always got superior ratings at contest. It was just expected. And in those days, the choir would go and compete at the district level. And if you got ones there, then you would go to state contest. Shawnee a cappella choir always got ones, superior ratings, and he just set the bar high, and that's what made him stand out as a wonderful director. And I have to say, he became a friend of our family. I have nieces, Lori Blanchard, my sister Margaret Ward Blanchard. And then I have to mention my younger sister, Barb Ward. Barb's not up here talking about all of her musical experiences with Harold. She's talking about, or she could talk about, how she helped him with a horse take care of it and so forth. I just have to say, Barb took care of Harold in his later years like a child would take care of their mother or father. She was over at his house every week. If we wanted to know how Mr. Beckett was doing in his later years, we'd ask her. You may know that he had the tragedy of his house burning. And she was right there to save his photographs, use her expertise to get those photographs back in shape so they could be used and saved. So I thank both of my sisters, my niece, for all of our care of Harold, and he's just a special, special man. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Lane Bushong with the Barbershop Harmony Society, chorus here in town. I didn't write anything down, so everything's strictly off the cuff, okay? I met Harold many years ago, many years ago. He directed the choir at Grace United Methodist Church. That's where I met him. I sang then with the Lima Uncalled For. If you remember that quartet or not, that's how I met Harold. That's how I met Harold. And he asked me shortly after I met him in the 50s, he said, would you come out to the Lima Memorial Hospital and help me with the ladies' choir? Why he asked me, I have no idea. I don't have a college education. I just have an ear for music. Anyhow, I helped him with what I could with that chorus, and I guess they did pretty well. Do you remember the choir? Any of you remember that choir he had at Lima Memorial Hospital, the ladies' nurses' choir? Okay, they were very good. In later years, Harold and I become real close friends. I formed another quartet called the Expression Marks Quartet, Barbershop Harmony Quartet, and we hired him as our vocal coach. I took lessons from him. The other guys took lessons as well, and he coached our quartet to the level that we could go on to the international contest, which was held in Minneapolis, Minnesota, in 1979, and we thought we'd just take him along. Now, this was many years ago, of course. This was the top 50 quartets out of 1,000 quartets that go on to contests. So he coached us to that level. And we got to that level. And they also had chorus contests there at the same time. They had a chorus there called the Vocal Majority out of Dallas, Texas. And when that chorus came on stage, it was 150 guys, all dressed in snow white tuxedos. And when they stood up and sang, I don't remember the song they sang. When they got done singing, Harold popped right up out of his seat and took his hands and rubbed it real hard like that on his head, pushing down the goosebumps. He said, I never heard anything like that before. And I said, Harold, I said, they were formed to be the best chorus in the world. He said, I believe it, really. One thing I learned from Harold, or many things I learned from Harold, he always said, sing it good and loud, right or wrong. People's got to think it's got to be right or they wouldn't have sung it that loud. That's one thing I remember from it. He was a dear friend of mine. I wasn't going to miss him. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Elizabeth Brown Ellis, the Executive Director of the Lima Symphony Orchestra, and also a 1984 graduate of Shawnee High School. Lori asked me to speak about Harold's involvement with the symphony, but I'd like to go back just a little bit before that if I could. You see, the story of Harold's involvement with the Lima Symphony and my involvement with a career in the arts are very much one and the same. Just as Harold nurtured the symphony for so many years, so too did he mold his students, and I was very fortunate to be one of them. I was in the 4th grade when I started taking music lessons from Mr. Beckett, as I also called him. I joined the chorus, drawn to his energy and his open-hearted sharing of his talent and his love of music. By the 5th grade, I had joined the choir, but Harold identified something else in me, and he pulled me out to play the piano during the chorus concerts. Perhaps he realized that I had a fledgling interest in music. Perhaps he also realized that my singing voice was really unfortunate, and that I would be better suited as an instrumentalist than I was a vocalist. I know some of you have said that he didn't give up on people. I may be the only one in the room that he just said, no, you can't, don't even try to sing. Regardless, he took a very shy little girl, and with kindness and very gentle persuasion, he gave me the confidence to take the stage and to make my literal, if not my figurative voice heard. It is impossible to imagine what my life would have been like without Harold's encouragement from such a tender age. He drew this bookish introvert out of my comfort zone, and he dared me to take chances. I can't imagine that I would have ultimately developed into someone who had the confidence or the interest in music to lead the Lima Symphony Orchestra without Harold. It is also impossible to imagine what that Lima Symphony would look like without Harold. For decades, he was involved in everything the symphony did. He shared his vision, his passion, and of course, his rich and distinctive baritone voice with us. He not only promoted our concerts and voiced our commercials, but he was also the force behind so many operas, operettas, and musical the LSO performed on our own and in conjunction with Town Square Productions. Many will remember a stunning German requiem we performed as part of our classical series in the late 70s, and his role as Bob the Thief in The Old Man and the Thief at a coffee concert in the late 80s. He applied the same commitment, work ethic, and extraordinary musicianship when he took the stage in The Barber of Seville with Jonathan Cromwell from the Metropolitan Opera under the baton of director Maestro First. And it is certainly rumored that Harold stole the show that night from Joe. From Kismet and Man of La Mancha to the notable Most Happy Fella, Harold shined bright on our stage and in our hearts. He was also a tireless advocate of the symphony, encouraging everyone he encountered to attend our concerts. He taught countless children to love and participate in music, and he inspired even more adults to support it. The last time I had the privilege of hearing Harold sing was at Dick Ridd's retirement celebration about 10 years ago. Although Harold was beginning to worry about his voice, he sang a song that Dick had written years before about his hometown with such clarity and such warmth that it was impossible not to imagine those two young men in their early 30s dreaming about their hometown, Dick's hometown, and creating a glorious future for the Lima Symphony that they both loved. Although Harold has not been actively involved in the symphony for some time, his legacy and his teaching continue to live and breathe in absolutely everything that we do. In October, Harold's son, Tom, brought a young child, his nephew, to our season opening concert, and I could feel Harold smiling down at that beautiful mentoring relationship that was happening in the very concert hall that Harold loved so very much. In November, we welcomed students from Harold's beloved ONU onto our stage to share music stands and to perform side by side with our professional musicians. And again, I could just feel Harold saying, "You're doing it right." And of course, in December, we're going to welcome the Lima Symphony Chorus, which Harold helped form and gave so much of his time and talent to. We miss Harold on our stage, but we feel his presence and a guiding hand in everything we do, and we thank him for his years of inspiration.
We're not done. I'm sure there are others that want to say something. I just want to make a reminder that, and there's been a few new people that have come in. We're just kind of creating an atmosphere of socialization and goodwill by people sharing memories and stories of their time with Harold as we're going through the afternoon. It's just a little after 3 right now. I also want to make a reminder of there's plenty of food over here, folks. If you want a cookie, some punch, there goes Martello right there. By the way, Tom, that was a gallbladder issue that Harold had in 1981. And you talk about a scared 24-year-old that had to go take kids to contest. But they were great kids. They were great kids. So, who's next? Please bring us a story. Margaret?
I got one.
Leo.
Hello, everybody. Class of 74, Leo Hernandez. I got elected to be president of the choir. No one else wanted it. Remember back then where we sold grapefruit? Yep. All right. Well, guess what the president's job was? To reconcile the receipts. You guys were everywhere, so I was getting out of class all the time. Thank you, Harold Beckett. The first time I really realized I really like this guy. We were in the 8th grade. It would have been 1970. We were at Hugh Downs Auditorium. And the 8th grade class was kind of over here. And the senior choir had just done a Christmas concert, practicing on the high school and the junior high. And he came around and started a teaching moment, trying to explain to a bunch of fidgeting high school kids what the Hallelujah Chorus was and what it meant. And somebody making noise. And Harold did one of those. And he took the baton and he handed it to the senior. He said, "The benediction. You guys don't deserve the Hallelujah Chorus." And walked off. And I said to myself, I want to be in the choir right then. Harold Beckett, I'll never forget you. Thank you very much.
I really wasn't planning on talking today. However, I figured a few things had to be set straight. First off, the Barbershop Quartet was pretty awesome, Tom. I do remember that back in the day. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Amy Jensen. I'm class of '83. Back then I was Bowser. We had a special relationship, Mr. Beckett and I. Somehow, and I still don't know how he found out, because I don't remember telling him, he found out something about me that I don't share with a lot of people, and that is that I have perfect pitch. So somehow I found myself starting our choir at contest every year. I was in choir, a cappella. I became his little secret weapon. And so that was interesting. We had a great time. We did a lot of musicals. And then at the end of my junior year, he left us. We were not happy. We were the senior class that had to start without him. And Mr. Jackson got the joy of taking his place. And looking back, that had to have been tough, following him. And I know there were a lot of people that gave you a hard time because of it. But you did a good job. We still had fun, and a lot of good times. I see a lot of people I recognize out there that I sang with or did things with, and lots of good times. I sing and play in my church band now. I didn't do solos back then. I do now. And like a lot of people have said, I still hear his voice in my head, you know, breathe down here, not up here, listen to each other. You know, that voice is just in your head, and I don't think it's going away anytime soon. But he's a great guy, a great choir director, and many other things. So we'll miss him. So that's it.
I'm Mike Thamuto, class of 1983. Of course, 82 is last year. You've heard it today that we had Harold, and then Paul had to deal with us after that. And we won't get into some of the things that you and I both remember, but we had a lot of fun. The one thing I can say about Mr. Beckett through the years and everything, for me, and I'm going to go clear back to when I was born. My mother knows the story better than anybody else, but, you know, when I was born, I had a hearing loss. They told my mother that I would never enjoy music, I would never play music, I would never sing music. Never. That changed. That all changed. I found that I did really enjoy it, and when I met Mr. Beckett, my whole life changed. He taught me how to have confidence in myself, which has been with me through all of my life. He also taught me that I had quite a singing range because I can still remember him, "Van Meter, come here. I need you to be a tenor today." And so I'd sing tenor, I sang baritone, or I sang bass. That was just a part of the singing end of it. You know, I played piano, guitar, banjo, bass guitar. I played a lot of different instruments. And by the way, I do it all by ear. I can't read music. So for somebody that was told that they'll never love music, I changed all that around, and that was Harold Beckett. And he took that confidence, and with that too, and a little push from my mother and Harold, I was in school plays, many different theater plays that I was in over high school. I was in college productions at Ohio State University. And when I graduated from college and I thought I'd put all that behind me, I got a phone call one day from George Dunster, and he says, "Hey, we're doing this musical. It's about, it's going to be a little bit different. It's about John Dillinger, but it's a musical, and we'd like you to play one of the parts in the production." And he said, "The problem is the person that was going to do the part is out. We have 2 weeks for you to learn everything." So not only did I find out I could still remember lines, but once again, years later, I found out that I could sing, and that was Harold Beckett again saying that he had confidence in me. That was then. And very recently, I've heard a lot of people talking about their memories of back then. I'm going to bring a little more up to date. About 8, 9 years ago, when I was in television, there was a little program on TV called American Idol, if everybody can remember that. Well, we had a live casting call here in Lima to audition people for American Idol. It was a 2-day event, and we set it up just like Idol, and we had to get the judges, and we had everything that we needed to put together. Well, we were a few days out, and we had 3 of the 4 judges, and we were all trying to figure out who we could bring in to be that 4th judge, and the light bulb went off. I thought, I'm going to call Harold Beckett. So I called Harold and talked to him for quite a while, and you know, the thing he kept saying is, "Van Meter, now you realize I'm almost 85 years old." And the whole thing required him to be there to be a judge, and he was going to be there from essentially 10 o'clock in the morning until 5 o'clock at night. It was a 2-day deal. After a lot of convincing conversation, and of course, at this time, we all remember that Nita was in the hospital and Harold went to see, in the home, I'm sorry, and Harold went every day to be with her, and he brought that up several times. He agreed to be a judge for 1 day. We were at the Ohio, UNOH, that's what I want to say, UNOH Event Center. We had the 4 chairs set up, all the judging papers, and everything went off, and the kids started singing and singing and singing and singing, and all the judging, and we went through the process of elimination at the first day, and, you know, it was a long day. It was, and with all the kids coming up, and I kept thinking, wow, Harold's up there with other people that were quite a bit younger judging, but every time I looked at him, it looked like his face was going to crack from the smile. At the end of the day, I went up to him and I said, "Well, what do you think?" And he says, "You know, Mike, I really, really appreciate you thinking of me to be a part of this. I really love the music. I really love the kids. But if I hear the song, 'Lean on Me' one more time, I'm going to scream." And that was Harold. And he, once again, thanked me very much, and he said, "You know, I told you I could just do this today." And I said, "Yes, I know, I realize, thank you very much." And we left it at that. Well, the next day, we're getting ready to go. Everything's in place. We have the 3 judges' chairs. We took the 1 out. And I happened to look out in the parking lot, and I see Harold Beckett walking up toward the building. And I walked up to him, and I said, "Mr. B, what are you doing here? I thought you were just going to come for 1 day." And he said, "Yeah, I know, Mike, but you know, I went home last night, and I realized how much I enjoyed hearing the kids sing. And I would love to do this once again if you'll have me." So we scrambled as fast as we could. We set up another chair, and Harold sat through another day, and a long day once again, of kids from all walks of life coming in to audition for American Idol. Not a lot of people know that. I also had called Harold a couple times over recent years when I was in television, and I had him do some voiceover work for TV commercials, because many of us remember years back he did stuff on the radio. Harold never said no. He was always there for us. And he's still for us here now, because as I listen to everybody that's been up here on the stage, we all have fond memories of him. He's molded my life. I'm sure he's molded yours. And I'm just glad we had him.
I'm Sharon Harriman Reese, and I just wanted to share it's very, very short, but it's always the thing I think about when I hear the word Harold Beckett. I had the privilege of being in Harold Beckett's a cappella choir, and he has always been endeared to my heart. But one little story about him. I was in a cappella choir, and of course, I was basically in the front row, needless to say why. And that's been my life. But anyway, Harold Beckett would always start out and he'd say, okay, everybody rise, all right? That was his signal. So I stood up, and he looked at me and he said, Miss Harriman, would you please stand? And I said, I am standing. And I lived with that all of my life, and many, many, many years later, he sang at my wedding, which I will never, ever, ever forget, sang for me, left there to go be a cantor at Temple Beth Israel. So I will always, 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 and forever remember him. Thank you.
No, come on. I was just going to say, I know, and I'm not sure who's pushing play, but I know we have a video of Cindy Warden. 2? Or I don't know how they're going to get aired, but Margo, go ahead and let's hear what you've got, and then sure, that's fine. There's, as I said, there's no order, rhyme, or reason to this, but at some point I wanted somebody, whoever it is, Mike, I don't know who's pushing play, but there it is. Go ahead, Margaret.
Well, I don't know what's left to say, but I'll say something. I knew Mr. Beckett for a long, long time. Obviously, I'm 82 years old, in Bill Giffen's class of 54, and I was there when Mr. Beckett came. Can you hear this, or am I too loud? I remember how excited he was when he had his first child. I remember a cappella choir getting started. I read in the paper what Mr. Beckett said. What I like to do more than anything is sing. And his gorgeous voice is, excuse me, still singing. He sang for my wedding, my first wedding. I'll read this so it won't take very long. Because of Mr. Beckett, most of us could say that we began learning under him. We began to share joy with him. But he never lost, with all his work and all his talent, he never lost his sense of humor. This story is about the end of his life. Only a few months ago, my husband, Ross Bowser, by the way, my name is Margaret Ward Blanchong, now I'm a Bowser. Ross, over here. And that was my stepdaughter over there, Amy. Anyway, my husband, Ross, and I visited Harold in the hospital. My sister told me, Barbie told me, he was quite ill. So we hurried up there. He was just lying there with his eyes closed, and I determined I was going to wake him up no matter what, He wouldn't open his eyes, but he would talk. And I decided we should sing together. And we did. Well, before that, I'm getting ahead of myself. We asked him what he would like to sing. Maybe you've heard this. Have you heard this song? Please don't hit your mother on the head with a shovel. Does that song really exist? I don't know. I said, Mr. Beckett, we don't know that song. So he started to sing it. He sang it lying there in the hospital bed. And it was good. His voice was good. I don't know where he ever got that song, and I think he made it up as he went along. But he did a good job. Anyway, so then we sang Amazing Grace and a few other things. And God be with you till we meet again. Well, we did meet again later on at Otterbein Care Center, where he came out to our sing-along. Ross and I do sing-alongs almost every Friday with the residents. And we finally got him to come out, and yes, he sang. That was a matter of weeks ago. He sang, and he really sounded fine. I don't think he ever lost his voice. And one more time, we visited at his home, my sister Carol Gibson and Barb Ward. Barbie always kept me up to date on how Mr. Beckett was. And so we zoomed over there because we knew it wouldn't be long. So we went over and we sang a few songs, Amazing Grace. And I sang Jesus Loves Me because we sang that in the care center. And then we sang God Be With You, I think, one last time. And 4 days later, we lost him, but we didn't ever really lose him. He left us, but we've not lost him. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Lori Blanchong. I get to follow my mom and my Aunt Carol, and my Aunt Barbie is the one that baked the cookies over there, and those cookies are the ones she took to Harold almost every week. It was his favorite cookies. Excuse my voice, I'm kind of losing. Chocolate chip and oatmeal, I guess, were his favorites. I'm from the class of 81, next to the very last class. I think that we kind of got to him. We had some discipline problems and a lot of talking, and I remember he kept saying, don't ever go into teaching music, but then 5 minutes later he'd be saying how much he loved us and smiling. And so I didn't listen to him, and I went ahead and went into music. First I went into the military. I was in the military choir, and then later on I became a high school vocal music director. And the first week I realized why he said that to me. I was able to make it through 8 years of teaching vocal music, and it was wonderful. Steubenville High School, show choirs, a cappella choirs. But I decided that was enough. I'm going to make music my hobby again, and now I'm a nurse. So, who out there has been following on Facebook? The comments I've been putting out on Facebook, I'm the one that's been doing that. And raise your hand if you're doing, good. A lot of the updates, as someone said, were from my Aunt Barbie over there. She would tell me what was going on, and then I would let you all know. And it's so really neat to hear everybody's comments about him. And what I did a couple months before he passed, I put all of the comments that you made, other people made that aren't here, in a little booklet. And I took it to him over at Otterbein. And as some of you know, his memory was getting poor at the end. So I'd read a few lines of what people would say, all the inspiration that he gave them in their lives. He was kind of sitting there like this at first, but then as soon as he heard what you wrote to him, or what they wrote to him, he just smiled, his face beamed, and he said, "They said that about me?" They said that about me, like he couldn't believe that all these people loved him so much. And I would just keep saying a few more sentences, a few more comments, and he just, again, "They said that about me." And yes, he was very humble, and he influenced all of our lives. And I love him, and I'm hoping that he can hear us right now. We love you, Mr. Beckett.
Hello, my name is Marilyn Roth-Basinger, and I am just kind of up here at the spur of the moment. I hadn't planned to say anything. There's my dear friend Paul back there. I wasn't going to say anything because I was never his student, but I felt like the luckiest person in the world because when Paul decided to go on to Fairborn, Paul called me and we had breakfast at McDonald's. It might be the last time I was ever in there, Paul. And Paul said, "Do you think you would apply for this job?" And so I did, and Harold wrote me a beautiful recommendation. So I never got to experience him as a student like you all did, but I was his student as well. When I applied at Shawnee after Harold and Paul left, there were 63 applicants, I was told, and I was so blessed to be the person they chose. So I had the honor, and I wanted to tell you this, of presenting the Harold Beckett Award for the next 25 years. So even though all of you have wonderful, wonderful memories, what a blessing that man was to all of us. And I wasn't even his student, but he was a blessing to me. Later, he helped me become an OMEA adjudicator, and Paul is as well. I've judged state contests for over 25 years. I still say some of the things that Paul used to say, or, well, that Paul said and that Harold used to say to us. Emotionally weight the text. Do you remember that? Not every word is exactly the same, but you have to breathe into it, and you have to caress. Remember him saying that? Certainly he said that to you. He said that so many times to me. But for 25 years, I got to stand up at Shawnee High School and tell about Harold Beckett and why I was presenting the Harold Beckett Award. And I would always tell my students, because of course we continued with the benediction. It's still being done every time now. And I would tell the students about why we do the benediction and who started that and what a fantastic person. And after he retired, I was able to have him come back and actually work with the current students. So I do want you to be hopefully comforted in your love of your mentor and your teacher, that I want you to know that my students also learn to appreciate and love Harold Beckett for the true blessing that he was and is. So I just want to tell you that. Thank you so much.
Hi, my name's Diane Clark Burton, and I'm the class of 65. I was not intending to say this, and so you're going to have to bear with me while I get my thoughts. But I have a long secret. I was in love with Harold Beckett. And why I say it was a long, old secret is because my family was in love with Harold Beckett. This was before Nita even came to town. This was when he first came to Shawnee. And I think I must have been, I was trying to do the math back there. Maybe 4, 5 years old. My mom, Dorothy Clark, and my dad, Floyd Clark, were great music people. Church choir, the Barbershop choir, and boy, could they sing. And they raised their first family, my brother and sister, Gordon Clark and Phyllis Clark, to be singers. And they were in the music program in high school when Harold got his job at Shawnee. Well, let me tell you, there was not ever a stranger that came through that door of our home that did not come out a dear friend. And my mom found out that here is this young man, and he needed to be fed. And my mother was also in charge of the kitchen at Grace United Methodist Church for over 50 years. She was an excellent cook, and if you ever had any of her food, you would know. I still miss it. She's been gone for 12 years, and I'm still missing some of those dishes that she made. Anyway, she started. Harold, wouldn't you like to come over? We would love to have you come for supper. Well, that was like, yes. He started coming to our house. I was just running around. I was just a little kid. But he would try to amuse me, and he did. And I just couldn't wait till he came in the door, because I knew he was going to have some kind of silly song or something. I think he was just trying to keep me under control more than anything. But, oh gosh, I loved him. Any of you will remember the TV show Cheyenne? Cheyenne, Cheyenne, where you be sleeping tonight, or whatever that song was. Well, he took that. That was my theme song. And every time he came in, it was, Diane, Diane, where you gonna be sleeping tonight? Well, you know, I look back at it now, and isn't it time for you to go to bed? But, oh gosh, he was, until Nita came, and then even after she came to town, he was a dinner guest at our table for nearly, I would imagine, at least 3 times a week. And I miss those days. I also miss the fact that there were these great big productions that he did. And I know that some of this especially over here, they'll understand. Do you remember The Minstrel? Do you remember? I know you're shaking your head. There had to have been thousands of people in that thing. There were, I mean, people from all walks of life and parents, and even my little black dog was, did you remember the little black dog? Well, even the little black dog my dog Tiny got a part in that. Anyway, I just wanted to do this more for my mom and dad and for my brother and sister, is to say that, you know, sometimes, yes, you all had your singing that you did with him and your professional lives that you did with him. And I know that some of you had personal lives with him, and probably more of you than not. And we've just been so blessed. We were so blessed to have him in our lives. Anytime you hear the name Harold Beckett, every single one of us smile. That was the blessing that he left with us. And I just wanted to share that. Thank you.
My name is Susan Snyder Pirtle, and I have a wedding story too. I'm from the First Baptist Church, and Harold was our choir director for decades, and we loved him too. When my husband and I were married on April 11th, 2010, the bride was 70, the groom was 80, the organist was 82, Janet Stuber, and we had two soloists. One was 87-year-old Harold Beckett, and the other one was a kid named Sharon Barr.
Well, we're going to wrap things up here and run the video here again, because there is sound, because there's a lot of you that came in after we got started with some of the verbal comments that were made, and so we want to play that.
Hi there, my name is Cindy Warden. I am a 1982 graduate of Shawnee High School, and I had the honor of being the very first recipient of the Harold Beckett Award. I live in Los Angeles, and unfortunately I could not be there this evening to celebrate the life of the great Harold Beckett with all of you. But I'm so grateful that I was given the opportunity to contribute to this evening in this way. See, when I think about Harold Beckett, I realized that there is probably no man other than my dad who has had a greater influence over the trajectory of my life. When I was in high school, I was the accompanist for the high school choir. I had the lead in the musicals. I was kind of the Taylor Swift of songwriting for Shawnee High School, in that I was always writing songs about my boyfriends. Harold would always give me the opportunity to perform my compositions in the choir concerts, you know, as he provided so many of us with so many wonderful opportunities. And as I was leaving high school and going into college, I was also taking voice lessons with the late, great Georgie Burmester, who happened to be a very dear friend of Harold's. And as I was preparing for my auditions, I think 2 times a week for 2 or 3 months, Harold would meet Georgie and I at her house, and he would sit there and he would coach me free of charge on my aria or my musical theater piece or my art songs or whatever it was that I needed for that particular audition. I went to college, I moved to Los Angeles. I had the blessing of performing in musical theater all over the country. I did TV commercials and television and voiced cartoons for the likes of Disney. And I only share that with you because I know that if it was not for the opportunities and the mentorship and the guidance and the kindness and encouragement of Harold Beckett, I don't think that any of that would have happened for me. When I moved to Los Angeles, Harold and I moved kind of beyond a student-teacher relationship, and we became friends. His nickname for me was Button. I'm not very good at phone calls, so back in the day, it's just like I would write letters, and I would sign my letters Button, Love Button. And he would write me back, and he started signing his letters Love Zipper. And every time that I was in Lima, we had a tradition that we would get together and have breakfast at Bob Evans. And he was always so excited and curious and encouraging and supportive and wanting to hear about what was happening in my career, but even more so, what was happening in my personal life. He was always genuinely concerned that I was happy. He was such a good friend, a genuine friend. And you know, whether teacher or friend or whatever, we can all do things in this world, but it's the intention behind our actions that really communicate who we are. And whether it was on a personal level or a teacher-student level, Harold did everything with such love and kindness and caring. And oh my gosh, I talk about his teaching. Does anybody ever remember hearing him sing Mariah from Paint Your Wagon? Oh my gosh, what a voice! Broadway. But he stayed in Lima. He stayed in Lima to teach and give us all his wisdom and his love and caring and kindness. He instilled so much confidence in all of us. When God created Harold Beckett, he gave us such a gift. One of the musicals that we did in high school while I was there was The Music Man, and it just seems so apropos because I think when we all think about Harold, he was the Music Man. So one of the favorite roles that I played was Vicky in The Full Monty. And ironically, I sang this song called Life with Harold. Don't worry, I'm not going to sing it. But I just have a couple pages here where I rewrote the words a little bit as a little tribute. I really love that man. He's like my personal angel. I'm sad, but I'm feeling no stress or strife as I celebrate Harold's life. What a gift, what a friend. He may be gone, but his song never ends. I'm telling you, I really love that Music Man. Thank you, Harold Beckett. I love you. We love you. Thanks.
Hello, my name is Debbie Fackelman Jones. I'm a 1981 graduate of Shawnee High School and participated in the choir program there. My father-in-law, Henry Jones Jr., also participated in the choir program at Shawnee High, graduating in 1955. He and I both enjoyed singing under Mr. Harold Beckett and had many wonderful conversations sharing memories that we had made. Some of my fondest memories are of Harold allowing my little women's ensemble to sing for various school concerts. He worked with Lori Blanchong, Vicki Jackson, Debbie Thompson, Colleen Childs, and I as we perfected some of our music for Solo and Ensemble Festival, and also singing in our school concerts, area churches, and area nursing homes. That was such a wonderful, wonderful experience. I later went on and graduated with a degree in music education. I have taught church choirs since I graduated from college and continue that now. I taught middle school choir and also high school choir and continued that tradition from Harold with my own students here in Meridian, Idaho. I also have some of my fondest memories of the singing and closing of our concerts with Peter Lutkin's The Lord Bless You and Keep You. That's something that I currently have my church choir closing rehearsals with, and we close our Sunday services with the singing of the Sevenfold Amen from that specific piece. Harold Beckett was such an inspiration. He created such passion for music and was able to share that with his students. He was such a kind and generous human being, and I will forever be blessed by being one of his students. Thank you for the opportunity to share tonight.
Thank you very much for coming today. I enjoyed seeing people that I have not seen in 35 years, students as well as classmates, and people here in the community. It's been great to see you, and I'm sure the rest of you are like that too. So let's take some time and mingle. Thank you again for coming.